Good evening, everyone. This is Reading for Charity again, on Father's Day, no less. It's been a fun day. It's been absolutely roasting here. There's not been much reading being done because there's too much fun playing outside in paddling pools. Hence the red face. It's not the light. It's actually just sunburn. So again, Reading for Charity. We are reading currently for the Archie Foundation. It's a fantastic charity. It helps sick kids in the northeast of Scotland, predominantly ones who have to go into hospital. If you've ever gone into hospital as an adult, you know how terrifying it is. It's a horrible experience as an adult, especially if you go into theatre. It's cold, it's sterile, it's supremely clinical, and it's a frightening experience as an adult. Imagine what it must be as a child, and that's one of the things that the Archie Foundation kind of helps with. It's a really, really good charity. It's well worth supporting. Hence, supporting it. Moving on to the book. Finally, Wizarding Glass, after having to put in a stopgap on Wednesday, and with good reason. This is one of the thickest books I'm going to be reading. This is definitely up on the top end of the scale of books, and I suspect that the next couple of books for Stephen King are going to be exactly the same. There's going to be a few more stopgaps put in because if they all go like this one did, I think they're going to require them. We'll get the bad bits out of the way first. Let's go for the bad bits first. This book was probably 500 pages longer than it needed to be. Out of a 850 something page book, I think it was 844 pages long. Probably 500 pages of that was filler. And it's not even like it's particularly good filler. The same kind of four things in the story, and again, trying not to give away as many spoilers as possible, the same kind of four things in the story happens again and again and again and again and again, from about page 250 through to 500 maybe. The same kind of four basic plot points are repeated again and again and again and again and again. And I know this is Stephen King's style. He doesn't like to delete any of his work. Once it's written down, it's written down. But you get the feeling that he kind of got to the start of the story of Susan and Roland and went, I don't know where I'm going with this. So he just kept typing until the idea actually occurred to him. So he just went over and over and over the same plot points. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to read because you kind of get to this section, you're like, hang on a minute, have I not read this before? And you're going back through the book to check, and this is almost identical to this, exactly the same bit 100 pages earlier. It's annoying. Everything is dragged out. The whole unmasking of Susan is horribly dragged out. The whole confrontation with the coffin hunters is horribly dragged out. The whole situation with Ree is horribly dragged out. The story that Roland is telling. So Roland is telling the story of Susan to Jake, Eddie, and Susanna, and the reason why he's telling them, I've forgotten. The story of Susanna, the story of Susan has gone on for so long. I've forgotten the reason he's telling them it in the first place. I'm going to have to go back to the start of this book to work out what's going to happen. It's terrible. It's terrible. The story of Roland and Susan shouldn't be part of the Dark Tower series, in my opinion. It should, however, be one of those addendum books that authors like to produce for long-running series. Every long-running series has a set of satellite books surrounding it which flesh out the main story, and the story of Susan and Roland should have been relegated to that. It's not, in my opinion, important enough to the story of the Dark Tower. In fact, it has relatively little bearing on the story of the Dark Tower. And it actually has the negative effect, in my opinion. Because up until the story of Susan, I liked Roland as the enigmatic, dark stranger, the man who always seems to have the plan, always seems to have that little bit more knowledge than everyone else, has the dark shady past that is hinted to and mentioned but never actually introduced. And I think that's far more evocative than the Roland that we have at the end of Wizard and Glass. I think it has had the opposite effect that Stephen King intended. So the more that King humanizes Roland, the less interesting he seems to me. The Roland of Gunslinger and Drawing of the Three, and especially the Wastelands. So the Wastelands was far and away the best one so far. Where he has the knowledge, and he has the ruthlessness, and he has the way forward, and he's always moving in that one direction, is not the Roland of Wizard and Glass. It's a completely different person, and it's actually spoiled the Roland from the previous book slightly for me. I do kind of want to know the story of Susan, but I didn't need a 600-page story in the middle of the series to do it. I don't. If I'd been so desperate after the Dark Tide finished, I would have gone back and read one of the Satellite books. Partially, I think this is down to Stephen King's, every single book in the series is slightly different from the next. So we've lost any pretense at what I would call an epic now. So the Gunslinger and Drawing of the Three set up a kind of Nordic epic in the same sort of style as Lord of the Rings. The grand tour to the Tower. In the same way Lord of the Rings, Frodo and the Ring go on the grand tour of Middle-earth to get to Mordor. The 3-4 of them on the grand tour to get to the Dark Tower. This book has departed from that wildly, in that he's now meandering around in history, not getting on with what's going on. The fact that there's one single line in this in early on, no, but it's almost exactly halfway through the book. I remember checking, almost exactly halfway through the book. It pauses back for one page back to Roland sitting around the fire with the rest of them. And Eddie kind of goes, "Oh, surely you need to stop for a drink. You seem like you've been talking for days." And Susanna snorts and makes a comment about time obviously always being slack in Roland's world. And I actually laughed at that, and it's like King actually added in this one small scene to get around the fact that the story is stupidly long and someone's complained about it. Obviously some sort of editor's gone, it's a little bit long, isn't it? How about getting back to the main story? He's like, oh no, yeah, okay, so I'll do that. Writes this one page and then gets on with what he really wants to write about, which is, the love story that between Roland and Susan. It feels very Charlotte Bronte-ish actually in places. The way they kind of have the coy courting between the two of them, and then slips more into kind of Jilly Cooper territory later on, and then finishes with. So I wish all that stuff wasn't there and taken out. The stuff with Roland, Aline, and Cuthbert versus the Coffin Hunters is genuinely quite interesting, and the town that's secretly against them, again, is a trope that's been done many, many times over the years in books and in role-playing games, and it immediately made me think of the Empire in Flames campaign from Warhammer. Because it's a similar idea, a group of adventurers ride into town, they're not known, but they're there for a reason, and secretly, the town is full of bad guys, be it cultists or working for the good man, or etc, etc, etc. It's a story, but it's a story we've seen before, and the elements of the story that King sets up is good, it's interesting, and it's fun. And then the frustration sets in again because nothing ever happens with it. When King is having his own characters express frustration and how slow things are going, it's, as a reader, I sit back and go, "Well, you're frustrated, mate. I have to read this." It's Jonas repeatedly, after he goes and smashes up the Bar K where Roland and friends are staying, and then they continue to do nothing. He spends the next chapter complaining that they're doing nothing, and it's like, yeah, we know, we get it. But it's so much of the book could have been chopped out. The scene about Jonas trying to draw them out through, smashing up the place and killing the pigeons and pissing on their saddles, etc. all that stuff. That's an entire scene that any competent editor would have sat down with King and said, no, it serves no purpose to the story whatsoever. And while we're at it, let's get rid of all this huge other section as well, which makes no difference to the story. Turn the book into 350 pages, and you've actually got a good, concise book that tells the story of Susan Delgado and moves the Dark Tower story on. That would be perfect. Instead, we have a lot of flab. Then there's a lot of flab in here. Right, that was all the bad bits. The good bits now. The start of Wizard and Glass is one of my favourite moments in books. It's utterly fantastic when Eddie kills a train using dad jokes. Tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. The whole Blaine is a pain thing. So at the end of The Wasteland, we're left on the cliffhanger of Blaine carrying the four of them towards certain doom, with the promise of a riddle that Blaine can't solve to keep them alive. Blaine, of course, has access to a centuries-wide database full of every riddle mankind has ever set, and all the adventurers have is an old burned out book of riddles missing the answers and their own wits, and the setup for that is brilliant. It's fantastic, and I love the way that Rowlands just sits and goes through into all these riddles, and it's actually adds a nice little bit of a backstory about the way that they do the riddling in Gilead. I loved that bit. It was a lovely little touch. I'm now worrying we're going to get an 800-page book dealing with nothing but riddles in Gilead, but calm. Only to buy themselves time to think of some way of possibly beating Blaine at his own game, which is the riddles. And in the end, it's Eddie who comes up with the idea, that they're reading from the wrong book. They shouldn't be reading from the Book of Riddles. They should be reading from the Charlie the Choo Choo book. And it's got the clue about the silly games annoying Charlie. And so he starts off with horrible puns rather than riddles, and shifts on to what is basically straight up dad jokes. Dad jokes so terrible that it actually causes the train pain. Blaine the train pain. To the extent where they're so bad, he destroys the circuit boards of the train, killing the train stone dead, and saving their lives in the process. Because the train slows down and crashes into the car barriers at much less than the 600 odd miles an hour that it was supposed to be crashing into them at. It's a fantastic moment. It's really hilarious to sit down and read. Because anyone who's a father who's told terrible dad jokes to their children knows the kind of no kind of expression that you get out of them, and that being transferred onto kind of a semi-omnipotent train is really, really well done. It's a fantastic sequence, and if the whole book had been of that quality, this would have surpassed The Wastelands easily for the best book I've read in the series so far. The following 700 pages spoils that entirely, sadly. There's other good bits and pieces in the book. I mean, the Alan and Cuthbert, I think, are interesting and nice characters, spoilt by the story. I think this book doesn't do them a huge amount of justice, but I think it sets them up quite nicely. They do again feel a little bit like Eddie and Susanna analogues, and I think that's probably there's a reason behind it, which I'm sure I'll come to, because I think I'm beginning to see how this world, how the world works already. But if I'm correct, I'll be happy. If I'm not, I'll probably still be happy. Any other good bits in the book? The trap near the end is good fun. The way they deal with the situation is good fun. I quite like the way that the witch is written, and the way she meanders through the story. Again, she's probably not important to the story. The whole deal with the crystal ball could have been done by Thorne's sister, or any number of the supporting waspish main characters. King has a slight female problem, at least in this series so far. They all seem to be waspish or crazy. And so far, yeah, they're with maybe one or two exceptions. That's really it. All the men, well, not all the men, but the men who matter are noble, or regal, or kingly, or kind. They all express very much positive attitudes and positive elements to their personalities. Very few of the women actually do. I mean, even Susan, who is set up as the nice, naive girl at the start, is willing to throw away the promise, on the basis of that all-consuming element that King uses to justify any decision. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Nah, it's Ka, let's do it anyway. Stuff the consequences. Even Susan, goes away and breaks the promises that she set, and she told herself she would follow against her own father's face, if you like. So we have the whole, all the women forget the face of their father at some point in King's books, where the men do strive to remember the face of their father. It's a problem I think he's got so far, and I'd like to see that change, but I don't know how he can, because every character he's introduced, unless he brings in, yet another character into the story and has them be the positive equivalent of Roland. Because for all Roland's faults, he doesn't actually act badly. He calls himself ruthless, and he'll let Jake fall in the gunslinger. But he knows himself that there's actually no way to save Jake. Jake is going to fall regardless. If he tries to save Jake, all that's going to happen is they're both going to fall and die. So for something that's framed as a choice in the gunslinger, when it actually happens, there's not really a choice whatsoever. So Roland is forgiven the transgression of letting Jake fall, and Roland never really has a particularly hard choice to make. When everyone in Tull is murdered, for example, is killed, it's because they're coming after him. He kills predominantly in self-defense. So the knight errant, which is how he's set up to be, kind of from our Arthurian legend, he's more like a Grail Knight from Arthurian legend, in that he's the higher purpose, the noble, the kind. And so I don't know whether the terms and the ideas have been mixed up by King, and when he talks about being a knight errant in the books, he really means a Grail Knight, or whether he started off with the idea of being a knight errant in Gunslinger and it's just morphed towards being a Grail Knight. I don't know. But we've still got 3 books left in the series to find out, and they only get bigger in size. Yeah, this is going to be the hardest set of reading through the whole of the year set of books, I think. I don't think anything's going to be harder than this to get through, just in sheer volume, in trying to keep the Wednesday Sunday dream going. Yep. Anyway, to sum up, because I've been almost 20 minutes already in this one, and I tried to keep them to 15. Wizard and Glass. Should you read this book? If you are following the Dark Tower series, yes, you should. But you should read the first 120 pages. Where are we? First 140 pages. Not even that. We're going back. Yeah, first 140 pages and the last 75. And everything in between you can happily skip. Because it doesn't have any real bearing on the rest of the story in any way, shape or form. If you're not reading the Dark Tower series, you'll probably be confused as hell what anything is going on. So yeah, read the start, read the end if you're following Dark Tower. In the middle, you don't really have to read. It's not important. It's not important to the overarching story. It should have been a separate book. Completely should have been a separate book. But this is Stephen King's style, and as frustrating as it is, the rest of the stuff is quite good. So the next book on Wednesday, I actually haven't got it sitting in front of me. It's sitting in the other room where I read. Will be the next in the Dark Tower series. I'm hoping to get that finished in time on Wednesday. If not, it will be the same again. It will be another stopgap book, one of the thin ones in its place, while I try and get that done for next Sunday. So we'll see how we get on. But fair warning already, just like I did last time. It's slow going. The Dark Tower is a slow read because everything's pretty dense. There's no large letters and easy words. It's a quite dense series. But anyway, yes, that's next week. Again, so this is Reading for Charity. We're currently reading for the Archie Foundation, a fantastic charity, predominantly working in the northeast of Scotland with kids who have to be in hospital. It's a fantastic charity. If you've donated before, thank you very much. Please donate again. If you've never donated before, please donate for the first time. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. A couple of quid thrown towards the Just Giving link that's in the description of this video, and you can help make a difference to any number of ill children. It's a really, really good charity to donate to. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. There's nobody in the chat again, but I've made my peace with that pretty much. It's all good. And I will speak to you all again on Wednesday. Have a good evening.